And that's why it's so important to understand past lives in your connections, because if you do not understand your shared history together as souls, you are doomed to repeat it. And also, many of the arguments that you will have in this lifetime will be charged with an intensity and with emotions and with dynamics that weren't even from this lifetime. It was from prior incarnations. Hi, my name is Comet, and welcome to my Cosmic Corner of the Internet, where we discuss all things astrology, and today, all things 8 ways to tell if you have had a lot of past lives with someone else, or when you have a lot of karma with someone else, using your astrological natal charts. Because you know that feeling. You know that feeling when you have locked eyes with someone and you're like, ooh, this feels familiar. You feel familiar. But in this lifetime, they're an utter stranger. Perhaps you've experienced it when you are in an argument with someone that you just met and you feel all of these strong emotions beyond even just what this situation would warrant. And it feels to be charged with something deeper, something more ethereal. Or perhaps you've experienced it when there's certain dynamics where you're taking a different role than what the situation would necessitate. Or maybe you felt it where there's a certain dynamic in your life where you are behaving in ways beyond what your role would be in that connection. Like maybe you feel like around a certain friend, you feel like there's a weird parental theme going on. Or maybe around a parent of yours, you feel like you're their parent. Again, when we have a lot of past lives with individuals, oftentimes we can switch roles, we can switch dynamics. In one lifetime, one can hurt the other. In the next lifetime, that person hurts the other to create this karmic balance. It is so fascinating. And today within this video, we are going to talk about how you can tell via your natal charts if you have a very karmic connection with someone. Very important disclaimer. This is not always a good thing. In fact, oftentimes, relationships with newer souls, people who you have not had a lot of past lives with, it can feel like a trip to the spa. Like, it is very pure, it's very simple. When you guys have arguments, it's just about things here. There's not like these weird push-pull dynamics. Having a lot of past lives with other individuals honestly complicates things quite a bit. So I'm not saying here that this is like signs of the most healthy dynamic. In fact, a lot of times karmic connections can be very unhealthy, and we agreed to meet up with people in order to accelerate our journey, in order to learn particular lessons, or as I highlighted, to create some sort of karmic equilibrium from things that have gone down in past incarnations. Now, I'm making this a series because within this video, we cannot talk about all of the intricacies, the tone that you have with individuals within past lives, the role that you played within past lives, where you guys are balancing. You can tell all of that via your natal charts, synastry, as well as your composite charts. Within this video, we're going to be mostly focusing upon how you can tell there's a lot of karma charging a connection. And I've broken it down into 8 steps, and we'll be doing a step-by-step with 2 mock charts so you can see all of these techniques coming to life. And before we dive in, I just want to give a warm thank you to the community here, my subscribers here on YouTube. I just so value that you guys just allow me the space to just be myself and just try out funky new video ideas. This video was inspired from a dialogue that we were having in this week's Magic Monday, which PS, if you're new here, I have a weekly horoscope series called Magic Monday that I post at the beginning of every week. Make sure to check it out. And within that video, we briefly talked about past lives, and it got a really warm response and people wanting to learn more. Oftentimes I feel the need to censor myself. I'm like, oh, this is too weird, this is too out there. So I want to thank you all for granting me the space to be myself. And I have a lot of ideas for this new series. I really want to dive deeper into how to tell how heavy of a karmic burden you have within your chart, essentially ways to really tap into past life themes within your chart. I really want to talk about shared connections, past lives, how to get deeper into the themes that you both have shared and bring it forward. So super excited. Make sure to subscribe to stay posted as I continue to fill in this series. Let me know if you do have any requests or ideas that you'd like to see. But without further ado, let's go ahead and take it into the 8 techniques to tell if you have a lot of past lives with someone. So what you want to do to prepare is you're going to have to pull up a couple of different charts or resources just so you have it all handy so you can follow along as I take you through these 8 techniques techniques because we are pulling from natal charts, we are pulling from synastry, and we are pulling from composite charts. Now, if you don't know what those terms are, I'll walk you through the entire process. First things first, I want you to pull up your chart on astro.com, and I want you to pull up the person that you are questioning about also on astro.com. Now, what I want you to do is click on extended chart settings. From here, under additional items, you will see the ability to add in some other components to the chart. So I want you to make sure to include descending node. I would love for you to include Vertex, and I would love for you to include Chiron and Juno. So just make sure those are illuminated. You could check more than that if you want to. Just make sure you have those 4. And then when you hit continue, you will get 2 charts that look like this. Amazing. Maybe you'll have them on different tabs or something of that nature. Now, what I want you to do, now that you have the birth information loaded up within astro.com, and then under extended chart selection, when you choose chart type, this time you're going to click composite. And I personally use the midpoint method. You're welcome to use Davidson. You're welcome to put in a reference point. Completely up to you. I'll talk through why I do prefer the midpoint method in a moment, but firstly, just click one of those. Amazing. So this chart that you're looking at is the chart of the relationship. It is the chart of your 2 souls fused together. We will also use this as part of our techniques. Now, the last thing that I want you to pull up, stay with me. I know you have many tabs open at this point, but now I want you to go to astro-seek.com, and under love compatibility, from here you'll type in person A, you'll type in person B, and you'll hit continue. So I want you to have all of these open on different tabs. We will utilize these different charts for different resources. You will be following along. I'll also be taking you through 2 mock charts just so you can see this technique come to life. And feel free to pause me. You can adjust the playback setting. These are a lot of advanced techniques, but my intention is to make this as seamless as possible. Okay, so you'll want to have 4 essentially resources up: person A, person B, the composite chart, as well as the AstroSeek. And particularly on AstroSeek, go to aspect tables. It'll look something like this. This is what I personally utilize, or you can scroll down and it'll tell you all of the different aspects that you have. And I made sure to include all free resources for this video just so you can begin to tune into these themes, because I think it's really important. And honestly, I love AstroSeek's synastry information and the way that they say things. So you could also just read through your guys' shared synastry together. But within this video, we're really going to be talking about how you can tell if you have a karmic relationship using astrology. Editing Haley here. I apologize for the brief interruption. I just want to be super clear. That tool that I just showed you, AstroSeek, in those aspect tables and the text that's written beneath, that is referring to aspects, which is also known as synastry. That is a word I'll be using throughout the course of this video that I don't really take a time to define. And all that word means is essentially how our chart interacts with other people's chart. And it creates this energetic that almost feels like a permanent transit throughout the course of the connection. I think of aspects like conversations. Some, like conjunctions, oppositions, and squares, are a little bit more of a harsh conversation. Certain aspects of us sort of butt heads with others, whereas trines and sextiles are more free-flowing, harmonious energy, certain components of ourself that have a sensation of ease as we interact with others. And so for the purpose of this video, I have mocked up 2 charts. I just chose random dates. This is Inner Planet Janet, who is the person that we always use here on my channel. And we'll say that she has a new beau named Inner Planet Jim, and things are feeling pretty intense, and she is inquiring if they have past lives. So I've printed all of the resources that I just walked you through for Inner Planet Janet and Jim. I will show it on screen, but just in case you see me looking in my folder or looking into the papers, I want us to be able to do this together. Okay, so you have all these resources. Let's begin to dive in. So number 1, the easiest way to tell if you have past life connections with people is if you have south node contacts or north node contacts, because if a planet is conjoining someone's south node, it's also opposing north node. So if you see that there is some south node, north node aspects, there can be some past life stuff that you guys are bringing in. Now, not all aspects are created the same. I would say if there is a south node conjunction, so somebody has one of their personal planets on the other's south node, 100% there are some karmic themes. And the tone of that planet will tell you what kind of themes they're bringing forth or what was the dynamic of the relationship. So we see with inner planet Janet, she has her south node, it looks like this, also known as descending node, in the sign Sagittarius at 15 degrees. Then we look over to inner planet Jim and we see that his sun is at 15 degrees Sagittarius. So bang, that is absolutely conjunction. Inner planet Janet and Jim have absolutely shared some past lives together. The other way to tell if it's kind of hard for you to visually like look and figure it out is you can also look at that AstroSeek tool. You can just scroll down and see if there's opposition to north node. That means a conjunction to south node. Or under the aspect table, find the north node symbol. And if there is oppositions to the other's planet, so the opposition looks like this. So we see Jim here has his north node opposite Janet's Mercury. Okay, we see that because it has that little red opposition sign. And just so you know, not all planets are weighted the same. So I would really take into account if person A has their south node on somebody else's personal placements or angles. So that would mean if you see that the south node is conjoining the sun, which is the case for inner planet Janet and Jim, moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars. Okay, those are the personal planets. Or let's say an angle, the ascendant, the IC, the DC, or the MC, one of these angles. You see that the south node is conjoining the others, one of those angles, one of those points. If you see a different symbol, that doesn't make it not karmic. I think there's a difference in terms of the tone. I think squares, harsh aspects definitely have a heavier karmic burden. It's a little bit more challenging. Trines and sextiles are a little bit more free-flowing. I am a Western astrologer, but I do want to say I believe in the Vedic tradition, they mostly take into account conjunctions and trines. Trines look like a little triangle. So up to you what you use. I would say conjunctions and squares, those will be dynamics really felt within the connection. Trines and sextiles is more of a gentle, harmonious flow within the connection. So that's the number one easiest way to tell that there is some past life stuff that you're bringing in. And we see, just to continue on in this example, you'll want to check both. So in that case, we saw that Jim had his sun on Janet's south node. We'll also want to see if it goes both ways. If it goes both ways, really, really karmic, okay? We'll say like if it's a half a point, if one person has a planet on the south node, it's a full point if they have it on each other's. And when we look at this connection, we see that Jim has his south node at 4 degrees Capricorn. When we go over to Janet's chart, we see that she has her Mercury at 4 degrees Capricorn. So again, you could do it by eye, by just looking at the numbers, or AstroSeek will tell you the aspects to one another's north node. So up to you. But I just wanted to illuminate that they both have it, okay? And they have it exact. You can have an orb, let's say if one was actually a degree away or degree before, I would still count that. I would count anything within 8 degree, like an 8 degree window on either side. But with inner planet Janet and Jim, it's exact. So these individuals definitely had some past lives together. We really want to look at the personal planets. Like let's say Jim had Janet's Pluto on his south node. The thing about Pluto is that it moves so slow that everybody within that generation is likely to have their Pluto on his south node. Does that mean he has a karmic debt to everybody? Probably not. That's why we look at personal planets, because those are quicker moving and those are really a snapshot of your soul. So those are the ones that we really want to look at in terms of south node connections. And same with our next tip, which is personal planet to generational planet connection. So that's if you see that one of those personal planets or angles is conjoining, aspecting the other's generational planets. Those are those slower moving ones. Jupiter and Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and also you can take into account Chiron and Juno. Each of these planets has a different tone that will paint over the connection. So we see here, you'll want to look where these like first 5, where they have connections with the other's outer planets, right? So here we see, this is like Janet's sun. So if we scroll down, 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 that means a conjunction to Mars. Okay, those are personal planets. Still going to color the tone of the connection, but not karmic. We see it sextiles Jupiter. Sextile is a soft aspect, it's not that big a deal. We see it squares Saturn, that's a bigger deal. And we scroll down and we see it squares Pluto, that's a bigger deal. So you want to see where one person's personal planets interact in particularly harsh aspects, conjunctions, squares, oppositions. Those are the ones that you want to weight the deepest. Trine, sextiles, it's a little bit more healthy. It's a little bit more helpful. It's not so much of a karmic past life charged up thing. So we'll want to check both. So we see that Janet's sun squares Jim's Saturn. We see Janet's sun squares Jim's Pluto. Now, like I said in the beginning, we will have a lot of these same placements and even in the same degrees. These planets move really slow moving. So I would put the most weight on this when it's a double whammy. If you have certain placements, you will have those aspects with a lot of your generation. Okay, so particularly if there's a double whammy and particularly if it's the same planet. For example, we see within this dynamic that Janet's sun squares Jim's Pluto. And then we look over and we see that Janet's Pluto also squares Jim's Mars. Again, they both have this Pluto connection. And so I would define that as a Plutonian relationship, and I would define that as karmic. So if you notice that you have harsh aspects, conjunction, opposition, square to your partner's outer generational planets, and they have personal planet harsh aspects to some of your outer generational planets, and you both have it with the same planet, I would say that's a karmic relationship. And when it comes to the tone of these planets, they are not all built the same, okay? So Jupiter sort of relationships, let's say your guys' personal planets aspect the other's Jupiter, that's a little bit more positive. You guys are probably bringing in some good karma. You could have been one another's mentor or had a lot of wisdom for one another. If there's Saturn, there is a heavier karmic toll, okay? There's going to be some certain dynamics of restriction that you guys experience. There's going to be a certain level of responsibility you two feel for one another. Now, I do actually like Saturn, especially harsh Saturn, in long-term relationships. I have an entire series of some of the best synastry aspects, because like I said, this is karmic. It's not saying it's always positive. But I will say, while Saturn can be really heavy, it does bind people together. And there is longevity there. So you could have known one another's souls for a long time, okay? And then let's say Uranus. You guys have Uranus. There could be a certain theme in this lifetime around liberating or feeling on the outside of society or even innovating something that could be part of your shared history. With Neptune, oh my gosh. With a Neptunian sort of relationship, this can be a connection in which you struggle to see one another clearly. You idealize. You could have a shared history together as artists or as spiritualists or something of that nature. If there's Pluto aspects between the two of you, this is one that you guys will have to butt up against certain dynamics of obsession, power struggles, being very jealous of one another beyond what this situation would warrant. Now, like I said, for this video, I would also take into account Chiron and Juno. Chiron will indicate you guys can trigger one another quite a lot if you guys have personal planets aspecting one another's Chirons. And with Juno, you guys could have been married within a prior incarnation. So again, I do plan to do more content taking us deep into how these karmic tones really paint a picture of our connection, but I really just want to get you familiar on when you know there's karma, okay? So that's a sign that you know that there's karma when you guys both have personal planet aspecting one of the generational planets, and even more intensely if there's a double whammy, okay? You both are aspecting one another's outer planets, particularly if it's the same planet. So the next technique to tell if you have a lot of karma with somebody is actually the IC. So at the bottom of the chart, you'll see IC, and it'll be depicted by a sign and it'll have a degree. So look at both charts and see if, let's say, one person has their sun at the same point as your IC, or somebody has their south node, that will be definitely karmic, on somebody's IC. Look at if there's personal planet or nodal contact to the IC. And the reason for this is that IC governs, yes, home, family, emotional state, but it's the roots of the tree of the natal chart. It signifies where it is that we have come from. It can signify ancestry, the past, lineage. So oftentimes when there is IC context, there will be this feeling of home in a human being. We tend to feel very at home with people whose sign is the same of our IC, but sometimes familiarity isn't always a good thing. Like there's definitely familiarity when you notice that somebody has one of their personal planets on your IC, but sometimes it can bring forth certain familiar dynamics that aren't necessarily healthy for you. So it can be very healthy, like this is someone that you set up a home with, right? Or it could be very unhealthy where you literally play out dynamics of your upbringing within this connection. So within Janet and Jim's chart, we see that Janet has her IC at 2 degrees Gemini, and we see that Jim has his IC at 27 degrees Pisces. Neither have any IC contacts with the other. For this, I would really want to take into account conjunction. So when somebody's personal planet lands right on the IC or within that 8-degree orb on either side. And it's not the case for them. It's not to say we throw all the other karmic indicators out the window. I'm just supporting you with all of the tools to how to find out that you have a karmic connection. So Jim and Janet do not fall under that particular strategy. So our next technique would be to look at the composite chart, that chart that we created in our preliminary steps. So when it comes to a composite chart, what is this? This is the chart of the relationship, how the two of your souls come together. And the composite chart tells a lot. It tells the purpose of why your two souls decided to link up. It tells of strengths of the actual connection, as well as potential downsides or challenges that the two of you can experience. Because when it comes to relating, there's you, there's me, and then there's this thing that we are creating, which is the relationship itself, right? Which does create its own entity. And the composite chart tells the story of that entity, of the connection, of what the two of you create when your souls fuse together. Now, there is so much here. I really want to make this part of the Karmic Astrology series. I want to take you on a video that takes composite south node by every single house, composite south node by every single sign, because that's how you can tell your guys' shared history together and your purpose, why the two of you came into existence within this lifetime. So I definitely want to do that video. Let me know if you would be interested in that. Within the composite chart, we can see if there is a heavier karmic indication over this union. And just briefly, how we create the composite chart is we literally create a midpoint, hence why the strategy that I utilize, midpoint method. So we saw that inner planet Jim is a Sagittarius sun, inner planet Janet is a Capricorn sun at a later degree. If you were to take the midpoint between those two planets, we see that the relationship itself is a Capricorn sun. It's how these two souls get together and meet up as an entity. Now, the downside of midpoint method is that midpoint method will create charts that are not statistically possible or astronomically possible. Because it uses the midpoint, sometimes you'll have bizarre aspects that would never happen in the sky, like Sun opposite Venus, hence why a lot of people utilize a different strategy. Now, my reasoning why this always aligned with me is because a lot of connections exist out of the framework of space and time. Like when we pull up a composite chart, we can pull up a composite chart of somebody that we haven't even met within this lifetime. Not every relationship occurs within this dimension, within our concept of time. Sometimes relationships exist out of our own perspective, but it does potentially create something, has a potentiality to create something. There's components of it that aren't necessarily plausible within how it is that we experience time, right, in our linear perspective. So getting a little deep there, I just want to say that's why I resonate with midpoint method, but I do want to let you know it'll create funky things like Sun opposite Venus. That would never happen. But anyway, so that is the composite chart. So when you're looking at this, you can tell if there is a lot of karma involved in the souls. So the first thing that you want to look at is if there is a huge emphasis within the 12th house. 12th house is like exclamation points. That is the most karmic house. And then to a lesser degree, 8th or 4th. I think these are all houses that can incorporate some karma, but particularly the 12th house. And if we look at inner planet Janet and Jim, I mean, their 12th house is off the hook. That's how you will know that this is definitely a karmic connection and the two came together in order to settle some karmic beef, shall we say, or find equilibrium. Now, the next way to tell is I want you to look at the composite chart, find the south node, descending node, it'll always be just opposite the north node. Find that and see if either person has any planets in that sign or around that arena. With the composite south node, as I highlighted, this is the couple's shared karma, shared history together that they are bringing into this connection. And like I said, not necessarily is every relationship deeply karmic, but what I will say is that you can tell it definitely is if the composite south node is the same sign as one or both of the individual's natal chart. So we see within Jim and Janet's composite chart, they have their south node in 25 degrees Sagittarius. If we look at their charts, we see that inner planet Janet has her Venus at 22 degrees Sagittarius, and Jim has his Venus at 23 degrees Sagittarius, and Mercury at 24 degrees Sagittarius. So definitely a lot of composite south node with one another's personal planets. Again, I would give a little window It doesn't have to be exact the same number. I would give, if it's like up to 8 degrees away on either side, that would be definitely some karmic implications, as their personal signatures are interacting with the relationship in a karmic way. They're bringing in certain dynamics into the relationship, and the relationship is bringing certain karma to them. So definitely a karmic signification. Editing Haley here. I apologize for the brief interruption. My mic cut out while I was filming. It'll come back momentarily. We just lost tip number 6, which is essentially when there are 12th house, 8th house, and 4th house overlays within the natal charts. So we already looked at these houses when looking at the composite chart, but we'll also want to look at the natal charts when one partner's planets land in the other partner's natal chart, thus bringing to the surface those life themes, those life arenas. Now, AstroSeek has a tool that makes this super simple. So when you scroll down, you'll see that one partner's chart will be on the inner ring and one partner's chart will be on the outer ring. So we see inner planet Janet's chart is in the middle and Jim's are the planets outside, the orange symbols. And we see these little numbers that essentially designate all of the houses. So we see that inner planet Jim's Mars lands in inner planet Janet's 12th house, right? So another karmic signification. We also see that Janet's moon, she's the blue symbols, lands in Jim's 8th house. We see that in the outer ring. If it helps you to do one at a time, you could also do switch B and A to put Jim on the inner ring if that is helpful for you. Now, what would make it way simpler is you just scroll down and it says planets and partners houses to the right-hand side here, and you could just see the numbers here. But it kind of helps to just see the chart, see the overlays, see the life themes, and just how the charts interact when there is one on top of the other. So absolutely up to you. Now, the next one I would look at is Vertex. So Vertex is really just something that we use within connections. Like, Vertex can honestly be a very helpful synastry component. I don't think it necessarily always needs to be karmic, but I will say if you notice that there's a lot of vertex synastries. AstroSeek does give you a little vertex category, and we see that Jim's vertex opposes Janet's sun, and then we see that Janet's vertex squares Jim's sun, and we see that Janet's vertex conjoins Jim's moon. So again, vertex is sort of like what it is that we are looking for within an ideal other. So if there's vertex signatures, it just could indicate that there's like these two people are pulled together like magnets, because if you have past life connections with somebody, you know you are magnetized towards them, hypnotized by them, and sometimes vertex can bring forth that sort of dynamic. Now, the last signification is if the two of you have flipped nodes. Now, I would say flipped nodes by both sign and house would both be significant. So what do I mean by flipped nodes? I mean if one person has, let's say, their north node in Gemini, south node in Sagittarius, and the other person has their north node in Sagittarius, south node in Gemini. It can describe a feeling of resonance, a feeling of familiarity, but the relationship can be triggering in that both people are embodying what the other person needs to learn. So it can create bumping heads, but it can create really great spiritual growth as well as teaching. So if you notice that the sign of your south node is the sign of your partner's north node, or vice versa, okay, that can definitely signify this karmic connection. To a lesser degree, if you guys have the same north node, but like I said, you'll have the same north node with anyone born within the same year and a half as you, so it's not the biggest deal, but just something to take into account. And like I said, I would also consider it in terms of houses. So if you have your north node in the first house, south node in the 7th house, and you link up with somebody who has north node in the 7th house, south node in the 1st house, this can definitely be a teacher for you. You guys are both embodying the themes that the other is here to learn. There can be a certain butting heads, certainly, but as well as a lot of acceleration from a spiritual perspective, which in my opinion is a key component of karmic relationships, past life connections. So Jim has his north node in Cancer in the 7th house, south node in Capricorn in the 1st house, and inner planet Janet has her north node in Gemini in the 4th house, south node in Sagittarius in the 10th house. So no, I wouldn't say they fall for that category. Now, to wrap up this dialogue, which truly I hope is the introduction to a long and happy series on this channel, please let me know if there's any branches of karmic astrology that you're interested in. I would say to wrap up the Janet and Jim connection, they definitely have some karma. Again, you don't have to hit every one of these contexts. I would just say if you hit a couple, definitely some karma that you guys are bringing with you. It's more so just attuning to how heavy of a karmic burden this connection has. And I don't want you to feel bummed if you're in a relationship and you guys don't have a lot of these. Like I said, karma is not always a good thing. It can make things heavy. It can accelerate our soul's growth quite a bit, but it also can be complicated and confusing and triggering and make you look at different components of yourself that you didn't even realize that you had. So I don't think it's necessarily something aspirational, but I do think it can be something deeply clarifying to understanding the connection, why it was brought into your universe, what you're learning from it. So my loves, that is our video. Thank you so much for being here. If you did get any value from the video, I would deeply appreciate a like, comment, share. Any nudge of engagement is so appreciated. I'm so excited for this series. Let me know what you want to hear about in terms of karmic astrology. And until we meet again, drink lots of water and stay cosmic.